The crystalline deserts of Korvax 7 glittered like shattered dreams under the dual moons. Sergeant Mara Reaper Hayes watched the horizon through her cracked visor, the atmospheric filters wheezing with each labored breath. 6 days since the ambush. 6 days alone on this war-ravaged hellscape. Echo 6. This is Reaper. Position unchanged. Still no contact. Her voice rasped through the comm, knowing no one would answer. The rest of her squad lay scattered across the crystalline wastes 20 clicks north, what remained of them. Anyway, the skyline flickered with ionic discharges, the Velathrix bombardment continuing beyond the mountain range. Mara checked her motion tracker again. Clear for now. But they'd come. They always came. She adjusted the makeshift splint on her left arm and inventoried her remaining supplies. 3 mags for the pulse rifle, med kit at 32%, suit integrity compromised but functional, water recycler operating at minimal capacity. Not great odds against an elite alien kill squad. Mara's neural implant pinged, detecting an encrypted transmission bouncing across Velathrix frequencies. She tuned in, her translation software decoding the alien language. Target persists on grid 7-3. Deploy Obsidian Talons. Maximum prejudice authorized. Obsidian Talons. Even among hardened Marines. That name inspired dread. The premier Velathrix kill squad, led by Commander Varric Tal, responsible for the massacre at New Brisbane Colony. Specialists in hunting down high-value targets. And now, they were coming for her. Mara grimaced as she packed her gear. The wound in her side had stopped bleeding, but infection was setting in despite the nanites. The pain medication had run out yesterday. They're sending their best, she muttered to herself, checking the charge on her sidearm. Should feel honored, I suppose. The eastern sky brightened with approach vectors, multiple craft descending through the upper atmosphere. Mara shouldered her pack and began moving toward the ruins of what had once been Korvax City. Urban terrain would give her advantages the open desert couldn't. As she limped across the fractured landscape, memories of the ambush replayed in her mind. Lieutenant Ellis ordering them to hold position at the ridge, the sudden silence as comms went dead, the first plasma rounds cutting through the air like liquid fire. 19 Marines reduced to charred remains in minutes. 19 friends? Gone. She'd only survived by falling into a fissure when the ridge collapsed. The Velathrix had assumed all targets eliminated. Their mistake. By midday, Mara reached the outskirts of the ruined metropolis, once home to 3 million colonists, now a graveyard of twisted alloy and shattered concrete. The perfect killing ground for either hunter or prey. Her neural implant pinged again. This time, the transmission was meant for her. United States Colonial Marine. This is Commander Varric Tal of the Velathrix Imperium. Your combat record has earned you the honor of a warrior's death. Surrender now, and it will be swift. Mara didn't bother responding. The Velathrix considered themselves honorable, but she'd seen the aftermath of their mercy on too many worlds. Instead, she activated her tactical overlay and began mapping defensive positions. If she was going to die on this rock, she'd make damn sure the Obsidian Talons remembered the name Reaper Hayes. High above, in geosynchronous orbit, Commander Varric Tal studied the holographic terrain map of Korvax 7. His 4-fingered hand traced the projected movement pattern of the human quarry. Fascinating, he murmured, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. She moves with purpose, not panic, beside him. Sub-Commander Lazak shifted impatiently, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the ship's lights. 1 human soldier, Commander. We could saturate the area with thermobaric ordnance and be done with this hunt. Tal's compound eyes narrowed. And where is the honor in that? Sub-Commander. This human has survived where an entire squad perished. Her combat record indicates 57 confirmed Velathrix kills. She deserves our respect. Respect? Lazak's voice carried disbelief. For a mammal. For a warrior, Tal corrected sharply. Deploy the talons in 4-point insertion. I want her taken alive if possible. As you command. Lazak bowed stiffly, mandibles tight with disapproval. When his subordinate had left, Tal returned his gaze to the hologram, studying the human's vital signs. Injured, exhausted, but still moving with tactical precision. He felt a stirring of something uncommon among his kind, admiration for an enemy. Soon, Sergeant Hayes, he said to the empty room, soon we shall see what manner of warrior you truly are. The first Talon dropship landed as night fell over the ruins of Korvac's city. Mara watched through her scope as 8 armored Velathrix warriors disembarked in perfect formation, their exoskeletons gleaming dully in the moonlight. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall, armed with plasma rifles and vibroblades. Standard Velathrix infantry traveled in groups of 6. 8 meant obsidian talons, just as the transmission had warned. Mara retreated deeper into the ruined building, her boots crunching softly on pulverized concrete. She'd prepared 3 fallback positions, each rigged with proximity sensors salvaged from dead Marines' gear. If the Talons wanted her, they'd have to hunt through a labyrinth of debris and traps. The alien squad split into pairs, moving with the practiced efficiency of predators. Their thermal imaging would be hunting for her heat signature, but Mara had coated her armor with coolant paste from a ruptured environmental system. It wouldn't mask her completely, but it would blur her outline enough to buy precious seconds. She keyed her neural implant to scan for Velathrix comm frequencies, catching fragments of their tactical chatter. Heat signature dissipating. Structure unstable. Proceed with caution. Honor to the first blood. That last bit made Mara smile grimly. The Talons were competing to see who would find her first. Pride was a weakness she could exploit. The nearest pair of aliens approached her position, their heavy footfalls echoing through the collapsed corridor. Mara pressed herself into an alcove, pulse rifle ready. As the first Velathrix warrior passed her hiding spot, she noted the distinctive markings on its armor, some kind of squad leader. The second alien paused, compound eyes scanning the darkness. For a moment, Mara thought she'd been spotted. Then its comms crackled. Tezak, the commander demands progress. Have you found sign of the human? The lead alien, Tezak, responded with irritation. Tell the commander that hunting takes patience. The human is skilled. That momentary distraction was all Mara needed. She lobbed a frag grenade into the adjacent chamber and sprinted in the opposite direction as the explosion rocked the building. Shrieks of surprise, then pain, told her at least one of the Talons had been caught in the blast. She didn't wait to confirm kills. Against Velathrix armor, the grenade would stun rather than eliminate. But it would slow them down and alert the rest of the squad, causing confusion as they converged on the explosion rather than spreading their search pattern. Mara reached her second fallback position just as the building behind her erupted in plasma fire. The Talons were angry now, abandoning stealth for brute force. Good. Angry hunters made mistakes. From her new vantage point in what had once been a comm tower, Mara had line of sight to the Talon dropship. An idea formed, desperate, but with potential. If she could reach that ship. A plasma bolt sizzled past her head, melting a fist-sized hole in the wall behind her. Mara dropped to a crouch, scanning for the shooter. There, on an adjacent rooftop, one of the Talons had taken up a sniper position, its elongated rifle trained on her location. Mara returned fire, 3 round bursts forcing the alien into cover. She couldn't stay here. The sniper would pin her down while the rest of the squad flanked her position. She grabbed her last frag grenade and rolled it toward the stairwell access, her only escape route. When it detonated, she'd use the smoke and confusion to break for the ground level and make a run for the dropship. The explosion came, but something was wrong. Instead of the standard percussion, this blast carried a distinctive whoomp followed by a rush of air. The Talons had deployed their own ordnance, an implosion grenade. The floor beneath Mara buckled, then collapsed entirely. She found herself falling amid a cascade of debris, the world spinning violently around her. Impact came a moment later, driving the air from her lungs and sending jagged pain through her already injured side. Dazed, she tried to orient herself. She had fallen 2 floors down into what appeared to be an old maintenance bay. Emergency lighting flickered weakly, casting everything in a sickly amber glow. Movement caught her eye, a Velathrix warrior approaching cautiously through the settling dust, vibroblade humming with lethal energy. Mara's pulse rifle lay just beyond reach, half buried in rubble. The alien saw her struggling and made a sound almost like laughter. "The famous Reaper," it said in surprisingly good English. "Not so fearsome now." Mara's hand closed around a jagged piece of rebar. "Fearsome enough," she grunted, and with one fluid motion, she hurled the metal shard directly into the junction between the Talon's helmet and chest plate. The alien shrieked, clawed hands grasping at the improvised weapon now lodged in its throat. Green ichor sprayed as it collapsed, legs thrashing in its death throes. Mara didn't waste time on triumph. She retrieved her rifle, checked that it was still functional, and moved deeper into the maintenance bay. The other Talons would have heard their comrade's death cry. They'd be converging on her position. But the maintenance bay offered something she desperately needed: transportation. A Velathrix VT-wing scout ship sat in the center of the chamber, apparently being serviced when the colony fell. If it still had power. The ship's access ramp was down. Mara approached cautiously, wary of traps. The interior was dark, console lights dead. But these craft had emergency restart protocols. If she could access the engine core and trigger a manual ignition sequence. Voices echoed from above, the remaining Talons coordinating their assault. Mara slipped inside the VT-wing and made her way to the engine compartment. Velathrix technology was different from human designs, but she'd received enough cross-species technical training to recognize the basics. The restart mechanism required a biometric scan designed for Velathrix physiology. Mara glanced back toward the dead Talon near the entrance. Grim work, but necessary. 2 minutes later, she pressed the severed Velathrix hand against the scanner. The ship hummed to life. Systems initializing in a cascade of alien script across the main console. Through the viewports, she saw 3 Talons enter the maintenance bay. Weapons raised, they spotted the VT-wing powering up and opened fire, plasma bolts scorching the hull. The ship's defensive systems weren't online yet. Mara jumped into the pilot's seat, frantically trying to decode the control layout. Forward thrusters, weapon systems, navigation. There. Emergency launch sequence. She slammed her fist against the glowing icon just as the Talons reached the access ramp. The VT-wing lurched upward, repulsor fields engaging with a scream of overtaxed machinery. The sudden movement threw the boarding Talons off balance. 2 fell back to the floor of the bay. The third managed to grab hold of the closing ramp. Mara drew her sidearm and fired twice through the narrowing gap. The Talon fell away with an alien howl. The VT-wing punched through the ceiling of the maintenance bay and soared into the night sky of Korovac 7. For the first time in days, Mara allowed herself a moment of hope. She could reach orbit, maybe even access the emergency jump systems. The ship's comms crackled to life. "Impressive, Sergeant Hayes." The voice was unmistakably Velathrix, but smoother than most, with perfect command of English. "I am Commander Veric Tal. That was my cousin's ship you've stolen." Mara checked the navigational systems, plotting a course away from the city. "Sorry about that, Commander. Family reunions will have to wait." "Indeed. Though I should warn you, that particular vessel was scheduled for maintenance due to critical engine instabilities. I would not recommend pushing it beyond atmospheric flight." As if on cue, warning lights flashed across the console. The port engine nacelle was overheating, power fluctuations cascading through the system. "Nice try," Mara responded, though privately she believed the warning. The ship was handling sluggishly, vibrations intensifying with each passing second. "But I've flown worse." "I don't doubt it. Your resourcefulness is why I've taken personal interest in this hunt. Sergeant, you've killed 3 of my Talons, warriors I personally trained. That demands attention." The ship lurched violently, alarms blaring throughout the cockpit. The navigation system showed her approaching a mountain range, and beyond that, the vast crystal caverns of the southern continent. "Tell you what, Tal," Mara said, fighting with the controls as the ship began to tumble. "If I survive this landing, come find me yourself. Skip the proxies." "An intriguing proposal. I accept." The transmission cut off as the VT Wing's port engine exploded, sending the craft into an uncontrollable spin. Mara activated emergency protocols, crash webbing encasing her body as the ship plummeted toward the jagged landscape below. Impact came with a symphony of tearing metal and shattering crystal. The world went black. "Reaper down." The transmission echoed through the Velathrix command ship, bringing a hush to the bridge. Commander Tal stood motionless, compound eyes fixed on the tactical display showing the crash site of the VT Wing. "Confirmed destruction?" he asked, voice neutral. Subcommander Lazak consulted his datapad. The ship's core detonated on impact. Readings show temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees at the crash site. Nothing could survive. Tal clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "And yet, no body. Vaporized. Commander, the human is dead." "Perhaps." Tal turned from the display. "Prepare my personal shuttle. I will confirm this kill myself." Lazak's posture stiffened with surprise. "Commander, protocol dictates." "I'm aware of protocol." "Sub-Commander, I'm also aware that this particular human has survived situations that should have proven fatal on 6 separate occasions. I will see her corpse with my own eyes before declaring this hunt concluded." "As you wish, Commander." Lazak bowed, though his tone carried obvious disapproval. When the bridge had cleared, Tal accessed the human military records his intelligence officers had compiled on Sergeant Mara Hayes. Her service history was impressive. Decorated 3 times for valor. Survivor of the infamous Procyon massacre, instrumental in the defense of New Earth during the first Velathrix offensive. Most significantly, she had been present at Korvac's Peak, the battle that had claimed his brother's life. Tal closed the file. This hunt had become personal in ways his subordinates could not understand. Honor demanded he face this warrior directly, not through proxies or from the safety of orbit. "Prepare for planetfall," he ordered as he entered his shuttle, "and inform the remaining Talons to converge on the crash site. If the human lives, I want her found." Consciousness returned to Mara in painful increments. First came the sound, the soft ping of cooling metal. Then sensation, searing pain across her ribs, the sticky warmth of blood on her forehead. Finally, sight, emergency lighting casting red shadows across the shattered cockpit of the VT Wing. The crash webbing had saved her life, though just barely. The ship had pancaked against the side of a crystal formation, then slid into what appeared to be a vast underground cavern. Massive crystalline structures rose around her, catching the light from the burning wreckage and refracting it in dazzling patterns across the cavern walls. Mara released the webbing and took stock of her condition. 2 cracked ribs, possibly a concussion, multiple lacerations. The med kit at her belt was crushed beyond use. But she was alive, and judging by the state of the ship's communication system, the Velathrix believed otherwise. That gave her an advantage, however temporary. She salvaged what she could from the wreckage: her pulse rifle, half a mag of ammunition, a fusion cutter from the emergency toolkit, and the ship's portable holomap. The latter might prove invaluable if she could determine her location in these caverns. Perhaps she could find another way out. The holomap flickered to life. displaying a three-dimensional rendering of the crystal cavern network, vast and labyrinthine. The caverns extended for hundreds of kilometers beneath the southern continent. Mining operations had expanded many natural passages before the war, creating a complex subterranean maze. And somewhere in that maze, according to the map, was an emergency resupply cache established during the initial colonization. If it remained untouched... Mara's planning was interrupted by the distant sound of engines, Velathrix's dropships approaching the crash site. So much for being presumed dead. She needed to move, and quickly. The cavern offered multiple exit points. Mara chose a narrow passage leading deeper underground, away from the surface access points where the Talons would likely begin their search. The crystal formations grew denser as she descended, creating natural choke points that could be defended if necessary. Her neural implant picked up Velathrix's communications, faint due to interference from the crystal structures, but clear enough to confirm her fears. Commander insists the human survived. Deploy seismic sensors at all major junctions. Honor to the warrior who brings her head. They were hunting her with renewed determination, and now, Commander Tal himself had joined the pursuit. Mara pushed herself harder, ignoring the protest of her injured body. The deeper passages were illuminated by bioluminescent fungi growing along the crystal veins, casting everything in an ethereal blue glow. The beauty would have been breathtaking under different circumstances. After several hours of careful progress, she reached a cathedral-like chamber where dozens of crystal formations converged in a spectacular natural dome. Water dripped from stalactites, collecting in a clear pool at the center. Mara approached cautiously, testing the liquid with her suit's analyzer. Potable, if barely. She refilled her water supply, then consulted the holomap again. The resupply cache should be 2 chambers east, behind a collapsed mining tunnel. If she could reach it before the Talons tracked her this far. A sound echoed through the chamber, the soft scrape of metal on crystal. Mara froze. Pulse rifle raised. The blue glow made it difficult to distinguish shapes among the crystal formations, but her motion tracker registered movement at the chamber's far entrance. Not Velathrix, the signature was wrong. Something smaller. "I know you're there," she called out, keeping her voice steady despite exhaustion. "Show yourself." Silence stretched for several seconds. Then, a figure emerged from behind a crystal column, humanoid but definitely not human. Shorter than the Velathrix, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. A Qualani, one of the subjugated species serving the Velathrix Empire. "Peace. Human," the alien said, raising all 4 hands to show they were empty. "I am not your enemy." Mara kept her rifle trained on the newcomer. "You're a long way from a Velathrix labor camp, as are you from your battle lines." The Qualani stepped closer, moving with a curious grace despite obvious injury to one of its lower arms. "I am Eric, formerly communications specialist aboard the dreadnought Inexorable. Currently, let us say, unemployed." "Deserter?" "Dissident," Eric corrected. "The distinction matters little to the Velathrix, but significantly to me. I have monitored your progress since the crash. Impressive survival instincts." Mara lowered her rifle slightly, but remained wary. "Why show yourself?" "Because Commander Tal has deployed sonic disruptors at all major cavern junctions. If you continue east as planned, you will walk directly into their detection grid." Eric gestured to a different passage. "That route will bypass their sensors. And I should trust you because I have suffered under Velathrix's dominion for 12 cycles, and any enemy of theirs is potentially an ally of mine." The alien's facial structure made smiling impossible, but its eyes conveyed something like grim amusement. "Also, because I know the access codes to the resupply cache you seek." Mara weighed her options. The Qualani could be setting a trap, but if it wanted her dead, it could have simply alerted the Talons to her position, and she desperately needed those supplies. "Lead the way," she decided. "But know this, If you betray me, your death will be the last thing you experience." "Charming," Eric replied, turning toward the Western Passage. "I begin to understand why Commander Tal is so obsessed with your capture. You share his flair for dramatic threats." They traveled in tense silence through increasingly narrow crystal tunnels. Eric moved with surprising confidence, suggesting intimate knowledge of the cavern network. Occasionally, the alien would pause, head tilted as if listening to frequencies beyond human perception, then adjust their course accordingly. "The Talons are deploying in standard search pattern," Eric explained during one such pause. 3 teams of 2, plus Commander Tal and his personal guard. They believe you injured and desperate, likely to make for the surface. "Let them think that," Mara replied, checking the charge on her pulse rifle. "How much further to the cache?" "1 more chamber, but we must hurry. The commander has ordered thermal scanning of all western passages." They pressed on, emerging into a small chamber dominated by a half-collapsed mining apparatus. Beneath the twisted metal lay a sealed hatch bearing the United Americas Colonial Authority insignia, the resupply cache. Eric approached the access panel and entered a complex sequence of codes. The panel flashed green, and the hatch hissed open with the release of pressurized air. "How did you know those codes?" Mara asked, suspicion returning. "I was a communications specialist," Eric reminded her. "Breaking encryption was my primary function before I reconsidered my loyalties." The cache contained exactly what Mara had hoped for: medical supplies, ammunition, emergency rations, and most importantly, a functional comm unit capable of reaching orbit. If she could contact any human vessels in the system... She quickly treated her wounds with nanite bandages and combat stim, feeling strength return to her battered body. The pain receded to a dull throb as the medical compounds took effect. "Why is Tal so fixated on finding me?" she asked as she reloaded her weapons. "One Marine hardly seems worth the attention of a Velathrix, Commander." Eric hesitated, all 4 hands working nervously. "You truly don't know?" "Know what?" "Commander Tal's brother was General Scar Tal, commanding officer of the Velathrix forces at Korvax Peak." The name hit Mara like a physical blow. General Tal, the architect of the massacre at New Brisbane, responsible for the deaths of thousands of civilians. The battle at Korvax Peak had been humanity's response, a desperate offensive to eliminate the general before he could implement similar atrocities elsewhere. "I was at Korvax Peak," Mara said quietly. "My squad was tasked with breaching the command bunker." "Yes," Eric confirmed. "According to Velathrix records, you personally fired the shot that killed General Tal." Mara closed her eyes, memories flooding back. The desperate firefight in the bunker. The general's guards falling one by one. The final moment, Tal rising from behind his command console, plasma pistol aimed at Lieutenant Rivera. Mara's rifle bucking in her hands as she emptied an entire magazine into the Velathrix officer. "It was combat," she said finally. "He would have killed my commanding officer." The distinction matters little to Commander Tal. In Velathrix culture, blood debts transcend the circumstances of their creation. You killed his brother. He is honor-bound to kill you in return. "Charming cultural practice," Mara muttered, securing the last of the supplies. "We need to move. How long before they track us to this chamber?" Eric's response was cut short by a distant rumble, followed by the unmistakable sound of weapons fire echoing through the caverns. "They've found the crash site," the alien said urgently. "The thermal trail will lead them here soon." Mara activated the comm unit, quickly tuning it to USCM emergency frequencies. "This is Sergeant Mara Hayes, serial number T-Stui, broadcasting on all emergency channels. Stranded on Korvax 7 with hostile forces in pursuit. Requesting immediate extraction. Coordinates to follow." Static answered her. She tried again, boosting the signal strength. Still nothing. "The crystal formations interfere with long-range communications," Eric explained. We would need to reach one of the surface access points to establish contact. Mara stowed the comm unit in her pack. Then that's our next move. You know these caverns. What's the fastest route to the surface that avoids the Talon's search pattern? Eric consulted a small device strapped to one of its upper arms, some kind of Qualani navigation tool. There is a maintenance shaft 3 chambers north that leads to a secondary mining entrance. Minimal Velathrix presence detected in that sector. Lead on. They had barely exited the cache chamber when Mara's neural implant pinged, an open broadcast on all frequencies. Sergeant Hayes. Commander Tal's voice filled her head. Your Qualani companion has led you admirably thus far. But did he mention his primary function before desertion? Infiltration specialist. Expert in gaining the trust of targets marked for elimination. Mara spun, rifle raised, but Eric was already moving, all 4 arms reaching for concealed weapons. She fired first, a burst that caught the alien in its upper shoulder. Eric shrieked, collapsing against the crystal wall. "Wait!" the Qualani gasped, blue blood seeping between its fingers. "Not what you think." "Explain, quickly." Mara kept her rifle trained on Eric's head. "Yes. Infiltrator. But not for Tal. For resistance. Qualani freedom fighters." Each word seemed to cost the alien tremendous effort. "Tal knows. Trying to turn you against me, only chance. Work together." The explanation made a certain sense. If Eric had wanted to betray her, there had been numerous opportunities already. And Commander Tal would certainly exploit any division between potential allies. Still, Mara kept her distance. "Prove it!" Eric reached slowly into a hidden pocket and withdrew a data crystal. "Velathrix attack plans. Next targets. Human colonies in Procyon sector. Proof of my allegiance." Mara took the crystal, keeping her weapon ready. Her neural implant could scan for basic authenticity markers, and the data appeared genuine. Strategic plans, deployment schedules, target priorities for the next Velathrix offensive. "If you're lying," she began. "Then, shoot me," Eric interrupted. "But first, help me stop the bleeding. Unless you prefer navigating these caverns alone with 8 obsidian talons hunting you." It was a fair point. Mara lowered her rifle and helped the alien apply a med patch to its wounded shoulder. The injury wasn't fatal, but it would limit Eric's mobility. "The maintenance shaft," she prompted when the immediate first aid was complete. "Can you still lead me there?" "Yes, but we must hurry. Tal's transmission means they have narrowed their search grid." They moved north through increasingly narrow passages, Eric struggling to keep pace despite the medical treatment. The sounds of pursuit grew louder, echoing footfalls and the distinctive hum of Velathrix energy weapons powering up. The maintenance shaft was exactly as Eric had described. A vertical tunnel with metal rungs embedded in the rock wall, leading upward toward a distant pinpoint of light. Surface access. "You first," Mara ordered, covering the passage behind them. Eric looked at the ladder, then at its injured arm. "I cannot climb. Not like this." "Then what do you suggest?" "Go. Take the intelligence crystal to your commanders. I will delay the Talons." Mara frowned. "That's suicide." "Perhaps. But my people have suffered enough under Velathrix rule. If this intelligence saves even one human colony from destruction, my death has meaning." Before Mara could respond, the crystal wall beside them exploded inward. Through the dust and debris stepped 2 obsidian talons, vibro blades humming with lethal energy. "Go!" Eric shouted, drawing a small disruptor pistol from a concealed holster. "I will hold them." Mara hesitated only a moment, then sprinted for the maintenance shaft. Behind her, energy weapons discharged with blinding intensity. She heard Eric's scream, pain and defiance mingled in a final act of resistance. She climbed frantically, the sounds of combat below fading as she ascended. The shaft seemed endless, her injured ribs protesting with each movement, but the light above grew brighter, promising escape. 20 meters from the surface, her neural implant pinged again. Impressive teamwork. Sergeant Hayes. Commander Tal's voice was calm, almost conversational. The Qualani died well, for a traitor. But did you truly believe I would leave your escape route unguarded? Mara looked up to see a silhouette blocking the light at the tunnel's exit, the unmistakable form of a Velathrix warrior. Not just any warrior. Even from this distance, she recognized the distinctive armor of the Obsidian Talon's commander. Tal had anticipated her move and positioned himself accordingly. The perfect trap. Mara could go neither up nor down. The shaft offered no cover, no tactical advantages. For the first time since the ambush, true despair threatened to overwhelm her. Then she noticed something. A maintenance access port set into the shaft wall just below her position, the kind used by mining drones to access secondary tunnels. It was barely large enough for a human to squeeze through, and there was no guarantee where it led. But it was her only option. She pulled the fusion cutter from her pack and activated it. The superheated beam slicing through the access port's sealed cover. The metal gave way with a groan, revealing a dark horizontal tunnel beyond. Above, Commander Tal had begun his descent. There is nowhere to run. Sergeant, face your end with the dignity befitting a warrior. Mara holstered the fusion cutter and squeezed through the access port just as plasma fire scorched the wall where she had been. The tunnel beyond was tight, designed for maintenance drones, not humans. She crawled forward on elbows and knees, pulse rifle dragging awkwardly alongside her. Behind, she heard Tal's frustrated roar. The Velathrix commander was too large to follow through the narrow passage. The tunnel extended for what seemed like kilometers, occasionally branching or intersecting with similar maintenance routes. Mara chose her path at random, having no reference point for navigation. Her only goal was distance, putting as much space as possible between herself and the Talons. Eventually, the tunnel widened enough for her to stand, opening into a larger chamber filled with deactivated mining equipment. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow. Power reserves nearly depleted after years of abandonment. Mara checked her position on the holo map. The mining equipment suggested she had reached one of the primary extraction chambers, and according to the map, such chambers typically had direct surface access for ore transportation. She was scanning for exit routes when her neural implant detected another transmission, not directed at her this time, but between Talon squad members. Lost contact with Commander Tal. Converge on primary extraction chamber Gamma 16. All units prepare for final engagement. They had tracked her. Somehow. Perhaps the maintenance tunnels had motion sensors, or thermal imaging had penetrated the rock layers. It hardly mattered now. They were coming, and in force. Mara took stock of her resources. Half a magazine for the pulse rifle, sidearm with 3 rounds remaining, fusion cutter with minimal charge, and the comm unit, still unable to penetrate the interference from the crystal formations. Not enough for a direct confrontation with multiple Talons, but perhaps enough for one final deception. The chamber's mining equipment included several partially disassembled extractor drones, heavy machinery designed to cut through crystal formations. If she could reactivate one, create a distraction. Mara worked quickly, cannibalizing power cells from her remaining equipment to jump-start one of the drones. Its systems responded sluggishly, decades of inactivity making the machinery temperamental. But it activated, cutting arms whirring to life with an ominous mechanical growl. She programmed a simple patrol route, sending the drone on a destructive path through the crystal formations at the chamber's northern end, away from her planned escape route. As the machine lumbered off, cutting indiscriminately through crystal and rock alike, Mara positioned herself near the southern exit, pulse rifle ready. The first Talon entered the chamber less than 3 minutes later, drawn by the sound of the drone's destructive progress. The alien warrior moved cautiously, plasma rifle sweeping across the chamber. When it spotted the drone, it raised a clawed hand to its comm unit, presumably reporting the discovery. That momentary distraction was all Mara needed. She fired a 3-round burst, catching the Talon where neck armor met helmet. The alien collapsed with a gurgling cry, green ichor pooling beneath its twitching form. Mara sprinted for the southern exit as more Talons flooded into the chamber. Plasma fire erupted behind her, superheating the air and sending crystal shards flying in deadly profusion. One caught her across the cheek, opening a shallow cut that immediately began to burn with unnatural intensity. The tunnel beyond sloped upward, a good sign. If she could reach the surface, establish communications with any human forces still in the system. The passage ended abruptly in a breathtaking sight, a vast crystal cathedral, hundreds of meters high, where massive formations converged like the ribbed vault of some alien church. Bioluminescent growths pulsed along the crystal veins, bathing everything in shifting patterns of blue and violet light. And in the center of this natural wonder stood Commander Varric Tal. He had removed his helmet, revealing the full alienness of Velathric's physiology: compound eyes, mandibles flanking a lipless mouth, exoskeletal ridges where a human would have a forehead. Yet there was something undeniably intelligent in that inhuman face, something that transcended species barriers. "I anticipated you would choose this route," Tal said, his voice carrying easily in the cathedral's perfect acoustics. "These caverns amplify sound. I heard your approach from the moment you entered the connecting tunnel." Mara raised her pulse rifle, though she knew the gesture was largely symbolic. In this open space, with no cover and limited ammunition, she stood little chance against a fully armored Velathric's commander. "Going to avenge your brother, Tal?" "That is my duty. Yes," the alien's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Though I find myself curious about something first. You were at Korvac's peak. You saw my brother fall. Tell me, human, did he die with honor?" The question caught Mara off guard. She had expected many things from this final confrontation, but not this strange request for reassurance. "He was defending his position," she answered truthfully. "He could have surrendered when we breached the bunker. Instead, he fought to the last." Tal nodded, apparently satisfied. "As I would expect. Scar was always committed to the old ways, duty above all else." He drew his ceremonial blade, the metal gleaming strangely in the bioluminescent light. "As am I." He moved with shocking speed for a creature his size, covering the distance between them in 3 massive strides. Mara fired her remaining rounds, most deflecting harmlessly off Tal's armor. One found a joint in the protection, drawing a hiss of pain but not slowing the Velathric's commander's charge. She discarded the empty rifle and drew her sidearm, backing away as Tal advanced. 3 rounds left. Make them count. The first shot Tal deflected with his blade, a display of reflexes that seemed impossible for a being his size. The second caught him in the shoulder, penetrating armor but striking no vital organs. The third jammed in the chamber, the weapon clicking uselessly as Tal closed the final distance. His blade swept down in a killing arc and stopped a centimeter from Mara's throat. "You have fought well, Sergeant Hayes," Tal said, compound eyes studying her with alien intensity. "Few humans have killed as many Velathric's warriors as you. None have evaded the obsidian talons for so long. If you're going to kill me, get on with it," Mara replied, refusing to show fear despite the blade at her throat. "Death comes to all warriors eventually," Tal said, lowering his weapon slightly. "The only question is whether that death has meaning." Before Mara could process this philosophical turn, the cathedral erupted in chaos. The remaining Talons had arrived, plasma rifles firing indiscriminately at both human and commander. "Lazak!" Tal roared, recognizing his sub-commander among the attackers. What is the meaning of this? The High Command has deemed your obsession with this human dishonorable commander. Lazak's voice rang out from behind his helmet. I am ordered to complete the hunt, by eliminating both targets if necessary. Tal's posture shifted subtly, from predator to defender in an instant. So the old ways truly mean nothing now. He turned to Mara, mandibles clicking rapidly in what she recognized as Velathric's decision-making. It seems we share a common enemy, Sergeant Hayes. The absurdity of the situation almost made Mara laugh. Temporary alliance, Commander. Indeed. Tal handed her a second ceremonial blade from his belt. I believe you know how to use this. Mara took the weapon, testing its balance, similar enough to the combat knives she'd trained with. Point the sharp end at the bad guys. I think I can manage. The first attacking Talon reached their position, vibro blade humming. Tal met the charge with surprising grace, his own blade describing a complex pattern that ended with the attacker's head separated from its shoulders. Mara engaged a second Talon, using her smaller size and greater agility to compensate for the alien's superior strength. She ducked under a wild swing and drove Tal's blade deep into the junction between armor plates, finding the vital cluster of nerves beneath. The Talon collapsed, legs spasming uncontrollably. 4 more attackers converged on their position. Tal fought with the practiced efficiency of centuries of martial tradition, each movement economical and lethal. Mara adopted a more improvisational approach, using the crystal formations for cover and leverage. When the last attacker fell, only Lazak remained, the treacherous sub-commander hanging back at the cathedral entrance. Plasma rifle trained on the unlikely allies. The High Command will hear of your treason. Tal, Lazak called, weapon charging for a lethal blast. Siding with a human against your own kind, you dishonor your brother's memory. Tal straightened to his full height, bloodied blade held at his side. My brother died as he lived, with honor. Something you know nothing about. Lazak. The sub-commander fired. Tal moved with impossible speed, pushing Mara aside as the plasma bolt struck him squarely in the chest. His armor, already damaged from the earlier fighting, offered minimal protection. The blast burned through exoskeleton and internal organs alike. Mara recovered her balance and threw Tal's ceremonial blade in one fluid motion. The weapon spun through the air and buried itself in Lazak's throat, just below the helmet line. The sub-commander dropped his rifle, clawed hands grasping futilely at the blade as he collapsed. In the sudden silence that followed, Mara turned to find Tal on his knees, green ichor pumping from the massive wound in his chest. His breathing came in labored gasps, each exhalation carrying a fine mist of bodily fluids. Commander, Mara said, approaching cautiously. The wound is mortal. Tal managed, compound eyes flickering with fading light. But I die, satisfied, honor, maintained. Mara knelt beside the dying alien, setting aside years of combat-trained hatred. In this moment, she saw not an enemy commander, but a warrior following his code to the bitter end. You fought well, she said, using the formal Velathric's acknowledgement she had learned during intelligence briefings. Your name will be remembered. Tal's mandibles clicked weakly in what might have been amusement. By whom, human? Your kind does not sing of enemy valor. I'll remember, Mara promised, and I'll make sure others do too. The alien commander reached with trembling claws to a compartment in his armor. He withdrew a small data crystal, similar to the one Eric had given her, but marked with the distinctive insignia of Velathric's High Command. Take this, he rasped, pressing the crystal into Mara's hand. Proof of war crimes, civilian targeting protocols against our ancient codes. Why I questioned orders, why Lazak was sent. Understanding dawned on Mara. Tal's obsession with her hadn't been solely about avenging his brother. He had been using the hunt as cover for his own investigation into Velathric's atrocities. His honor had led him to question his superiors, making him as much a target as she was. "I'll make sure it reaches the right people," she promised. Tal nodded, satisfaction evident even through alien features. "Perhaps, next incarnation, we fight on same side." His body slumped, the light fading from his compound eyes. Commander Varric Tal, last adherent to the old Velathric's code of honor, was dead. Mara stood slowly, pocketing both data crystals. With the Talons eliminated and Lazak dead, she had a clear path to the surface. And now, something far more valuable than her own survival. Evidence that could potentially end the war, or at least force the Velathric's high command to adhere to civilized rules of engagement. The climb to the surface was arduous but uncontested. When she finally emerged from the crystal caverns, the dual moons of Korvax 7 hung low on the horizon, bathing the devastated landscape in pale light. Her neural implant detected a clear signal at last. No crystal interference to block transmissions. She activated the comm unit. "This is Sergeant Mara Hayes, serial number T2, broadcasting on all USCM frequencies. I am alive and require immediate extraction from Korvax 7. I have critical intelligence regarding Velathric's war strategies and evidence of war crimes." For long moments, there was nothing but static. Then, a familiar voice crackled through the comm. "Reaper? Holy shit, and is that really you?" Lieutenant Jax, her former squad's second in command. "We thought you were dead with the others." "Not yet," Mara replied, allowing herself a small smile. "Though not for lack of trying on the Velathric's part." "Hold position and keep transmitting," Jax ordered, professional demeanor returning. "We've got a recon frigate in low orbit. Sending a drop team to your coordinates now. ETA 20 minutes. Copy that." Mara settled into a defensive position among the crystal formations, keeping watch on the cavern entrance in case any Velathric's reinforcements arrived. None did. The USCM dropship appeared exactly on schedule. Combat thrusters kicking up clouds of crystalline dust as it landed. Marines in full combat gear deployed in standard perimeter formation. Weapons scanning for threats. Lieutenant Jax approached her position, helmet retracting to reveal an expression of disbelief and admiration. "One Marine against an elite Velathric's kill squad. How the hell did you survive?" "Reaper?" Mara thought of Eric's sacrifice, of Commander Tal's final act of honor, of the complex web of duties, loyalties, and codes that drove both humans and aliens in this seemingly endless war. "I had help," she said simply, handing over the data crystals. "And I think these might help us all survive what comes next." As the dropship lifted off from the crystal deserts of Korvax 7, Mara looked back at the devastated landscape, graveyard to friends and enemies alike. She had entered those caverns as a soldier seeking only survival. She emerged as something more, a witness, a messenger, perhaps even the key to a different kind of future. The war wasn't over, but perhaps, with what she carried, its nature could change. Honor and justice might yet find a place amid the stars, if only enough warriors on both sides remembered what they were truly fighting for. Sergeant Mara Reaper Hayes settled back in her seat as the dropship accelerated toward orbit. Her fight had only just begun.